Joining us now to talk about the proposed U.S. government stake in Intel and the future of industrial policy, if that's what this is, CNBC contributor Walter Isaacson. He's a professor at Tulane University and a Perella Weinberg advisory partner. Historically, Walter, and welcome. If you look up public-private partnerships, there's a long history of things like that, most of which it's either Latin America, China, or somewhere else where it's been done, and usually not very successfully. There are some emergency situations. Another PPP with the payroll protection and things like that. We have done things under emergency circumstances, but this is not, or is it?
No, this is really kind of odd. When you see everybody from the Fortune magazine piece that Jeffrey Sonnenfeld and the former CEOs of Xerox and Procter & Gamble wrote, or the Wall Street Journal editorial board, you're seeing what is really state capitalism here, where the government is interfering in all sorts of ways in corporate decisions, whether it be pricing, whether it be Coca-Cola, whether it be Intel, and maybe taking a stake in it. And that type of state capitalism, it often evolves into crony capitalism, where you have favored companies and industries, those that pay tribute to the leader. And that is a recipe for not only disaster, but just sort of a corrupt sense of messiness.
Well, I'll tell you, not in defense necessarily of it, but I'll tell you my take. The actual way that those chip grants were doled out in terms of industrial policy in the last administration, with child care and DEI and ESG and Davis-Bacon union wages, and not even getting a stake in the company. That starts it. I would almost say this is improving upon something that was even worse and less bad than the deal we had with as a government with Intel in the first place. Still not great, but actually preferable to what we were doing. Or maybe not.
When you talk about all the things they requested in, what do you call the DEI, whatever, this is the problem with state capitalism. This is a problem with too much government intervention. And you can argue that was worse than what Trump is trying to do with taking a stake in it. But no, this is just going further and further down the path. And if you believe what you just said about all the government intervention, then you got to feel that way now.
I do. I'm even more disturbed that the government, go back and look at what we back. How many charging stations did we build? How'd Solyndra work out? We're not good at this. And no matter how smart you think you are, and usually, I don't know, Democrats think they're a lot smarter. There's 100 of them that could run the entire country, and we'd be, oh my God, it'd be the greatest thing that ever happened. And we know what happened. We saw that presidency, and it didn't happen, Walter. So I don't. What gets me, I don't want to pick Intel. I don't want to own Intel. I'd rather let somebody else, the free market, decide who's going to win there. Huh?
You want to buy NVIDIA?
For now.
Yeah.
Walter, here's the question, though.
Absolutely.
If we don't go down this road, I'm not
then
suggesting we should.
How do you do it?
As you know so well, we did not make chips in this country for a reason, because the economics of making these chips didn't make sense. In fact, I don't think if you had gone to these companies a couple of years ago and said, we're going to give you money and you're going to give us equity, they would have said yes. I think they would have said no, because it didn't make economic sense. That's why they weren't in the business to begin with. Now, maybe you could argue the field has changed insofar as the tariffs change things, and that may make the economics to do this here more attractive, if you will. That's obviously a shift. But if we don't somehow shift the balance, how do you actually, in a free market world, make this happen?
Well, as you know, and I talked to Joe about it a week ago on this show, I really believe we got to bring manufacturing back, and especially if we want to have stand up to China in certain instances, we got to bring chip manufacturing back. Just a question of the way to do it. I think that to some extent using tariffs on especially things that are defense related or national security related is important. But to have the government decide it's going to take a stake in Intel and not take a stake in NVIDIA, but tell NVIDIA to give it 15% or whatever, that's just sort of a scattershot method of crony capitalism that's not necessarily going to bring chip manufacturing back to America, which is the goal. We got to keep our eye on the fact that the main thing is the main thing here, which is bringing manufacturing back to America.
Yeah, and from the defense perspective, the national security perspective, you can think of it with this, you can think of it with pharmaceuticals. I mean, we all got caught during the pandemic by not realizing how much of the supply chain was out of our control and how many things we didn't make here. You can see it even more recently with the rare earth minerals. China kind of is holding us up over that, too. I guess, how do you go about it? Is there a room for private-public partnerships or public-private partnerships on some of these things? You think of that. You think of the energy needs we have with AI. Is there room for working relationships between the government and private companies when we have so many big, important national issues that need to be addressed?
I've got a dubious of public-private partnerships, as we said earlier in this segment, and I do think there are many ways to address things. I've always been generally in favor of free trade, but as I said last week, I think I've now come to believe that a 5-10% tariffs on certain industries and frankly across the board, you put your thumb on the scale so that we do more in America.
How do you fix the energy problem?
Yeah, did you complain? I don't remember you complaining about any of the industrial policy, and I'm not doing whataboutism. I'm doing hypocrisy. I don't remember any complaining about the CHIPS Act or the energy transition and trying to grease the skids during the Biden administration.
I never believed in all these Solyndra loans.
Well, you should have come on and said that. Maybe we didn't ask
Maybe
you.
we didn't invite him.
I never would have. I would have said that you can have, if you want, subsidies to solar, if you believe that's a long-range goal of this country. And across the board type of thing where you subsidize consumers who want to put in solar. That's fine. That's not crony capitalism.
That's making decisions. But Walter, what about the issue?
That's picking the big macro winner.
I don't
in the
believe
whole.
You should pick winners and losers.
Okay, what about the idea of a public-private partnership when it comes to something like fixing the energy needs for this country? Because I don't know that it's going to get done otherwise.
Well, I think on big things like the grid in America, you've always had utilities that have to be both regulated and public-private partnership. You need infrastructure to do it. But as Joe said earlier, when you start getting into actually executing on infrastructure, like trying to build electric vehicle chargers across America, that's not the government's specialty.
Yeah, or windmill. But we thought it was noble and the right thing to do because we're all going to fry in the heat if we don't build windmills on the coast of every, I don't know.
But Joe, you wouldn't have been in favor of the government. I mean, you would have been appalled if the Obama administration, Biden administration, or George Bush administration started taking, in equity stakes in windmill makers. I mean, that would be nuts.
I know. It's sad because we can find instances. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's a equal opportunity screw up from both sides.
And you've seen it. I mean, but it gets to something worse, I think, historically, which is it's not only public-private partnerships. You're getting into state capitalism when you're trying to tell Coca-Cola how to do its formula. You're trying to tell Intel you want a stake. And then that gets into crony capitalism, which is what you kind of have here. You have a cult of personality where people like Tim Cook have to pay tribute to the cult of bring gold. I mean, it's just amazing.
It wasn't solid.
And Paramount has to say, oh, you're using state power to hold up my deal, therefore I'll pay your library.
But can I say, this was a similar thing even in the Biden administration where Elon Musk was not invited to go in, and as a result, he was getting cut out. His company was getting cut out.
You know my feeling about that one. It wasn't a great idea either.